Hey there and welcome to our next Unity 3 tutorial. This is basically a follow-up tutorial and is based on the stuff we've already done in the last two tutorials. So we'll use the SteamVR scene again. But what we want to add today is something like an elevator. So it doesn't have to be necessarily an elevator. But with this script you can do a lot of stuff like moving the player around in your scene. So for example, if you want to do a racing game in VR, you can attach your player head mount to a car, or if you want to move around, for example, as a game guiding scene at the beginning in an elevator or in a train or whatever, you can do that as well. And that's basically how it looks like. So what we just need to do is create an object which moves around. And yeah, we are going to do that today with the Unity animation timeline. You can do that by script as well with tweening libraries like DoTween, for example. But in our tutorial today, we just want to do that by hand so that you guys get to know the Unity animation timeline as well and the animator. And yeah, as you can see, the rest is pretty straightforward. So like mentioned in here, as you can see in the hierarchy, all we need to do is creating a platform which moves around and then attaching the player to it. How that works, I'm gonna show you guys in a minute. First of all, maybe let's have a look at the scene in VR. So basically what the outcome will be of this little course here. Okay, so let's open the Unity VR scene from our previous tutorials. And as you can see, I've cleared everything a little bit, so we have a little bit more space. Because what we want to do now is add an empty game object. Oh, sorry, and this should be in our root. And maybe let's call it elevator. And then maybe we want to add a platform. So by now we can just use a cube. And then maybe already let's scale it a little bit and move it to a nice position. Because as we can imagine, maybe we want to move the player or elevate the player from top level to bottom level. So yeah, maybe just find a nice position of where the start point of the platform should be. Okay. So, and what we need is, in the last showcase we already understood how the button component works, which came within our SteamVR plugin. So what we can do is basically just copy and paste this whole hover button component here. Yeah, you can find it in our scene in level 1 and then video showcase. So just copy and paste this whole hover button and then click on elevator platform and then press Ctrl V, or maybe drag and drop it into the platform. So we need to move it a little bit around that it aligns nicely with our platform. Maybe we can even extend everything a little bit, that a little bit up. Yeah, it doesn't matter by now. I mean, this is just an example, and like I said, you guys can even go more crazy, use a car, a roller coaster, whatever. So this is just really a really basic example. Okay, nice. So now we have empty elevator object, and within this object we have a platform. So we can move around this whole platform, and everything moves within that game object. Okay, so what we want to do now, we want to add some animation in there. And like I said before, you can animate in Unity stuff by script with nice libraries like Dotween, but what you can use as well is like doing that by hand with the Unity animation timeline. You can open this one by clicking on Window, Animation, and then Animation. Maybe let's move it down here. And now, as you can see, to begin animating stuff, just click on the element you want to animate, in our case the platform, and click on Create. Should always save it somewhere, so maybe in Assets, Animations, you can save this one and call it Elevator Animation. Okay, now we have a nice timeline here. We can scrub around, but as you can see, there's nothing going on there now. So what we need to do first is add a property, and then transform, and then you can see we can change position, rotation, or scaling. In our case, we first of all just want to move the platform around, so we just want to add the position property. Now we have X, Y, Z positions, and here our keyframe points appeared in our timeline. With the middle mouse wheel, we can zoom a little bit in and out. And I can imagine that probably around 3 seconds might be nice for the animation. And by pressing on this control icon here on the left side, we can record positions. That's actually quite nice, because now we can move around in our scene. And then just by hand move our platform to the position we want to move our player to. So maybe let's check out if this is nicely aligned. Okay. As soon as we have found a nice position, we can click on Record Again. And then you can see, okay, we got some new keyframes here. And if you scrub around in our timeline, even within the scene mode, you will see the animation. These are just empty keyframes. We can remove these. They were still there because at the beginning the timeline was set to 1 second, and then there were like default keyframes in there. Okay, let's check it out from the other side. This actually looks quite nice, but as we can see here, the animation overlaps with our flooring, and what we need is to add a nice curve in there. And we can do that by clicking on bottom left, curves, and then we can see the animation, the different animation timelines in here as curves. And maybe we want to change the behavior of our axis X, so that we move a little bit more into that direction, that we have a nice roundish animation. So by clicking on these little keyframes here, you have this little handlebar, and with that one you can stretch the animation. And then we have a nice ground animation. Okay, maybe let's save the scene and then hit play to test it out in game mode. Okay, come on. My PC is a little bit slow today. Here we go. The animation loops by now, but we will change that in a second. Because what we've created is just an animation. And what we need in Unity to control animations and maybe also to change behaviors and add some logic in there is called an animator. So via Windows, window animator, animation animator, we are getting this tool here. And with that tool, it's basically a drag and drop tool, which is node based, which is kind of nice because there's no scripting involved by now. And this tool shows us how the different states of the animation are going on at the moment. So if we hit play, we can see that there's a default entry state, which means as soon as the scene plays, the entry state will trigger the elevator animation, and then as soon as the animation is finished, it will start back again from start. So what we want to do now, first of all, is creating our own default state. And then we want to set this state as default state. That means that if you play the scene, first of all, Unity will trigger this new state. Maybe we call it elevator start state. And then we can decide what happens from there. And we are doing this because later on we want to control everything by script. So we want to have like an animation circle here, and this circle should be controlled by our script. So the animation we've done here, or we did before, maybe we rename it because it's an elevation animation which goes from top to bottom. So maybe we name it elevator animation TB for top bottom. Speed 1 is fine. If you want to increase or decrease the speed, you can do it here as well. And so we want to connect this first. You can do that by right-clicking on this button or state here, and then say, I'll click Make Transition and drop this one to our animation. Now we want to create an empty state here so that we know when elevator animation is finished. And let's call that elevator animation TB complete. Same here, right click, make transition, connect this one. Okay, so by now we can trigger elevator animation top bottom, so that the elevator goes from the top part from our first level to the third level. Then we have another state here when everything is complete, which is fine, then it should stay there. But now what we need as well is elevator animation bottom top, so that we can go from level 3 to level 1 again. So we add another state here. Let's call that, maybe let's copy and paste just the name here, and let's call it bottom top. As this one should be the animation which goes from bottom to top, we need to add a motion here, and can search for elevator animation. But as this one will be played in reverse, we need to set the speed to -1. Let's connect that one. And after this is done, we want to add another empty state again, which is called elevator animation bottom top complete. There's no motion, as this is just an empty state. Okay, now let's connect all of them. Okay, let's play the scene, check how it looks like. Okay, the elevator moves from top to bottom and then moves back. As you can see, there's a little flickering in here, and that's why, or that's because of, if you go into our animations, there's a check on write defaults, and we need to remove that from all of our animations, because what it means, or what it does, is that as soon as the animation went through the whole timeline, then it gets reset to our initial position. And that's exactly what happened here. So the elevator went down from top to bottom, then got reset. And that's why the elevator was flickering at the start position for a couple of milliseconds. But then the other animation got triggered, and then the elevator moved back. Okay, the state is no name by now. Sorry for that. So, okay. The names do not really matter. It's more about that you have a nice structure here, and you always understand what's going on. Okay, so let's check again. Write defaults is set to false everywhere. Let's try it again. Elevator goes down, elevator goes up again. And by now, this runs in a loop. What you may realize is that the elevator doesn't go 100% to the start and end point at the moment. And that has something to do with the transitions in here. Because if you go to the transition settings, and you can see here already that there's some kind of overfading in there between the different transition events. And that is helpful from time to time if you want to, for example, move your player and then rotate it, and that everything is smooth, and the edge from one animation to the other gets somehow faded into each other. This is pretty helpful, but in our example, because we want to just move it 100% from start to end and vice versa, we want to put the exit time to 1, so that it runs through 100%, and put the transition duration to 0. And then you can see here in the timeline, it just runs from 0 to, what do we have here? 3.5 seconds. But there's no fading transition between. Let's do the same for all of them. Also for the first one. Okay, nice. Let's check the animation again. If all the settings were set correctly, you should see now a nice animation from top to bottom, bottom top, in a loop, and yeah, no gaps in here. Awesome. So we've built our first animated elevator, but what we want to do is to control the elevator. And there our animator has a really nice feature which is called parameters. So if you click here on this tab, parameters, you can add your own parameters you can use later on in your scripts. And yeah, you can use floats, integers, booleans, but what we want to do here, what we want to use is called a trigger. Trigger means if the trigger gets, you can click and invoke the trigger here as well, but you can do that by script, of course. So yeah, maybe let's call this one elevator top to bottom trigger, and then let's add another one which is called elevator bottom to top trigger. Okay. By now these are just two triggers we can use, but we want to connect these to our animation logic here. And as you remember at the beginning, we are starting with the entry point, going to the elevator start state, and then elevator animation to top bottom is triggered. So what we want to do is between these two add a condition in here. So if you click on the connection, you can add a condition. And now we can select between top to bottom trigger or elevator bottom to top trigger. If you added, for example, integer or float parameters, you can even do something like if, for example, I don't know, as an integer, scene time is set to 12, then trigger the animation. Yeah, by now we are just using normal triggers, but you can even put some more logic in there. Okay, so let's check. Okay, we are entering here. Then if elevator top to bottom gets triggered, the animation gets triggered. Then we are going into our bottom top complete state, which is fine. But as our elevator should stay there, the connection to the next animation should be a trigger as well. But then in that case, bottom to top trigger. Then same here. When the animation is complete, just stay there. So we need again, if we want to go now again from top to bottom, elevator top to bottom trigger. Save the scene, hit play. Now nothing moves. That's how it's supposed to be, but we can try out even in game mode how the triggers work. And now we can click here on this little, it looks like a radio button. It's actually not a radio button, but we can trigger or we can invoke these different triggers there. So if we click on top to bottom trigger, our elevator moves down and then stays in our complete state. Now we trigger bottom to top trigger. moves back up. Stays there until we invoke top to bottom trigger again. Okay, so basically we have everything we need for our elevator. So we can move the elevator from top to bottom. We have two triggers here we can invoke later on from our script. But our work on the elevator itself, that's done. So let's go out of play mode. And now we can add some scripting to our scene. So let's add controller, which is maybe called elevator controller. As a new script, create an add. So come on, takes a while. Here we go. So let's open our elevator script in Visual Studio. Let's move that away. Okay, so now we wanna write a little bit of code just to give our elevator a little bit of logic. So first of all, what we need, if we wanna move around our elevator, we need access to the animator. And maybe let's call it just animator, that's fine. And then what we want to do later on, because we just do not want to move the elevator around, we want to attach our VR player to the elevator as well. So we need a public game object, which we want to call VR player. Okay. So for the internal logic of our C# class, we want to add some private booleans. And the first one should be a boolean which can be set from outside. And maybe we want to call this one top to bottom state. Set it to true at the beginning. That means that always we can check if the elevator is going from top to bottom right now, or should go from top to bottom, or if the elevator should go from bottom to top. So if you should go from top to bottom, then top to bottom state is set to true, otherwise we will set it to false. Then we want to add another boolean, which is called in movement, which is false at the beginning. And this one we just want to set to true as soon as our elevator gets triggered or gets started and is in motion or in movement. And as soon as the animation is completed, we can set this to false again. And so we have always the control if the elevator moves from top to bottom or bottom to top, and if the elevator is in movement or not. To control that from outside, because what we need now is a connection between our animation timeline and our script here. And what we can do is define two public functions. The one is maybe called on start elevator. And the other one is called on end elevator. Or maybe let's even call it on start animation or on animation start and on animation and elevator. Doesn't really matter, but just looks a little bit better. Okay. Now, what do we want to do on start or on end? First of all, to understand that, we should know how we can trigger these two functions. Let's save it and go back into Unity. And we want to trigger these functions in our animation timeline. So let's go back to Unity and then click here on your animation panel again. And now, I mean, it's kind of small, but here at this second bar, you can see that there's a little, it looks like an arrow with a plus, and then you can add an event here. So now what we've done, we added an event at the beginning of our animation. And we want to do the same as soon as our animation is finished. Let's move that one a little bit around. So, okay, so now we have two events. And the first one, and now that's a pretty cool thing because our platform has already our script here, our elevator animation controller, and we have these two public functions on animation start, on animation end. And so we can just click on this little event flag here and select on animation start, and here for that one on animation end. You can even, if you want, put some more events in between. For example, if your elevator should animate somewhere and then in the middle part, I don't know, you want to trigger an explosion or whatever, you can add more events in here. And these are or get always invoked when our animation timeline is passing these event flags. Okay, save it. Now we have a connection between our animation timeline and our script here. So on animation start gets triggered always when the animation is somewhere at the start, so at frame 0, and then on animation end when the animation is completely on the last frame. Okay, now we need to put some logic in there. So first of all, we want to check on animation and elevator. Okay, in what kind of state is our elevator? So if top to bottom state equals true. In C# you do not even need equals to true because you can also do just that. If top bottom state, because that means that it's true, but just because we are C# beginners, let's do it like that, then it's a little bit more clear. And so if the animation went through the timeline to our last frame, we want to check, okay, is our elevator in top to bottom state? If yes, this is definitely the end of the animation. So what we can do then is, first of all, top to bottom state, change this state. So let's set it to false. That as soon as our elevator wants to move the next time, it knows, okay, now I need to go from bottom to top, not from top to bottom anymore. And as soon as this function gets triggered, we know the elevator did move so far, but now he's in a static state, so in movement false. We can copy and paste this whole part here because for the first frame it's pretty much the same. So, but there, if top to bottom state is false, because that means that we are going reverse, top to bottom state in that case is true again. And in movement is false as well, because yeah, we reached the first frame, elevator is standing still. Okay, nice. So what do we need as well? Because as you guys remember, we've already added this VR button into our scene. But what we want to do is we want to connect our elevator to this button script. So what we need is like a public function again, which is maybe called start elevator. And from there we want to trigger our animations. So first of all, we need to check if in movement equals false, because we do not want to trigger animations if the elevator is already moving. Otherwise it might be flickery, and so we check if start elevator is in movement false, so it's not moving, it's standing somewhere, then we can trigger our animations. And then we need to check in which kind of state is the elevator. If it's in top to bottom state, then do something. Or if it's not, do something else. And what do we want to do if the elevator is in top to bottom state? We want to trigger the animation. And now, as we remember, in our animator, we have these two triggers here. So if we want to move the elevator from top to bottom, we need to invoke the trigger top to bottom trigger. Maybe copy and paste the name here because we need that now in our script. And because the animator is connected to our script, we can call animator. Then there's a function which is called set trigger. And then you just need to paste the name of your trigger in here. We can copy and paste that because if we are in top to bottom state, we want to trigger elevator top bottom trigger. Otherwise, we want to trigger bottom to top trigger. Let's make sure that we copied everything right. Okay, that's fine. Nice. So now everything should work like expected. Sorry, I forgot something. Of course, if in movement is false here, so if the elevator stands still, we are not in movement. But of course, if animator set trigger gets invoked, either or it's top to bottom or bottom to top, the elevator is in movement. So we set in movement here to true. Let's go back into our Unity scene. So play. Okay, now let's check it out. If we move the button component down, nothing happens by now. Why? Of course, because we haven't connected the button to our script. So let's check the hover button. Scroll a little bit down, there's a hover button script. We can remove all the old stuff from on button down, on button up, because this is still triggering our video showcase objects. So let's remove these here. And we only want to use on button is pressed. So let's hit plus here. Then let's search inside, let's search inside of our scene for our platform. Then elevator controller, and then connect. Okay, so now we've connected the button, start elevator. But our platform elevator controller also needs two connections here. So first of all, the animator. The animator is part of our platform, so we can just drag and drop the same game object in here. Then you see, okay, platform got attached. And then we want to already drag and drop our VR player in here. So let's hit play and test if everything works. Okay, let's move around now, and let's go into the scene view. Cool. Seems to work. But what's still missing is our VR player is not attached by now to our platform. So the platform is moving if you're pressing the button, but the VR player is still staying where it was. So let's attach the VR player to our platform, as this is, or the controller is part of our platform. We can just here call VR player dot transform, then dot parent, and that means that we can add another parent object to our VR player, so that our VR player gets attached to another game object. And as long as the elevator is moving and we triggered the animation, we wanna parent our VR player to our platform, so basically to our game object here in our class, and we always need to parent it to a transform. So VR player transform parent equals game object transform. Okay. But as you can imagine, now the VR player got parented once to our platform, and of course we want to release the VR player again as soon as the animation is completed. So we can use our functions here on animation start, elevator complete, and then we can set the parent just to null, and then the VR player gets released into our scene again. So if we hit play now, let's move towards our platform, press the play button, and then we're moving towards our platform. And same here, we can trigger the animation again. Oh, sorry, didn't press it all the way through. And then we're moving to the top part again. Okay, that's basically it. As I said previously, this is just a super basic example, and a pretty ugly example as well, as we just have a cube for our platform. So yeah, feel free to add car rides, train rides, roller coaster rides, whatever into your VR scene. And yeah, thanks for watching, and see you in the next session.